Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to take a few minutes talking about the chapter 4. So in chapter 4, we're going to learn the exchange rate determination. So in other words, we're going to learn what factors um, affect the exchange rate. So here is the objectives. First, we're going to explain how movements of exchange rate is measured. So basically, we're going to be talking about how can we measure the exchange rate movements. And the second one, we're going to learn how the equilibrium exchange rate is determined. And the third one we're going to learn is the factors that determine the equilibrium exchange rate. And of course, we're going to spend a few minutes talking about how financial institutions attempt to capitalize on anticipated exchange rate movements. So chapter 4 will be the focus on the first test. You will see at least five or six or even more, 7, 8 questions about chapter 4. After learning chapter 4, you should be able to analyze the movement of the supply and demand curve, and you will be able to find the new equilibrium exchange rate. So the first is how do we measure the exchange rate movements? This is relatively simple. We use two ways to measure the exchange rate movements. Obviously, the first one is depreciation, meaning there will be a decline in the currency's value. And the second one is just appreciation, which means there is an increase in a currency's value. And obviously, we use the percentage change to represent the depreciation or the appreciation. So you can take a look at this formula. So the S is the currency's value in period T. So this is in period T. And ST minus 1 obviously is the price in T minus 1. And we use S minus ST minus 1 and divided by ST minus 1. And this gives us the percentage change. So here we have a percentage change in the foreign currency value. So this is how we measure the exchange rate movement. So on the test, you might see, for example, if I ask you, the value of British pound depreciated by 5%, and how do you calculate the value today? So, for example, how do you calculate the value in 1 month? For example, if the exchange rate for British pound today is $1.5 and multiplied by 1 minus 5%, because it depreciated by 5%, and this gives you the value in 1 month. So this is how you calculate the new exchange rate. And next, the exchange rate equilibrium. So before talking about exchange rate equilibrium, we're gonna look at what does exchange rate mean. So there are two meanings. The first one obviously is the price of currency. So remember, the exchange rate of a currency is just simply the price of a currency. For example, if the exchange rate of British pound is 1.5 US dollars, it means that the price of one unit of British pound is 1.5 US dollars. It also means that if you want to buy 1 unit of British pound, you have to pay 1.5 US dollars. So this is the first meaning of the exchange rate. And the second meaning is the rate at which one currency can be exchanged for another. So we also take a look at this example. So if the exchange rate of British pound is 1.5 US dollars, it also means that 1 unit of British pound can be exchanged for 1.5 US dollars. So here are the two meanings. The first one is the price, and second one is the exchange rate, or it is the rate at which one currency can be exchanged for another. And just as any other commodities, the price of the currency or the exchange rate is determined by the demand for that currency relative to the supply for that currency. And the equilibrium exchange rate is simply just the price at which the demand for that currency is equal to the supply. And we can use the graph to show that. On the y-axis we have the price, and the x-axis we have the quantity. So this is the supply and this is the demand. So the intersection point means the demand, the quantity demanded is equal to the quantity supplied. So this is the quantity, and the price is the equilibrium price, or the equilibrium exchange rate. So next, the demand curve for the currency. So this is the demand curve for British pound, demand schedule for British pound. As we know, the demand schedule is a downward sloping curve. It means that when the price is high, the quantity demanded is low. This is the Q1. When the price is low, the quantity demanded is high. And this is obviously this is easy to understand. For example, if the price for British pound is high, as a US customer, you are less willing to exchange your US dollars into British pounds. And when the price for British pound is low, you are more willing to exchange your US dollars into you are more willing to exchange your US dollars for British pounds in order to buy British goods and services. And another thing, and I think it probably is more important than this, is that we have to know that the demand for British pound is simply just the supply of US dollars. So the demand for British pound is the supply of US dollars by US people, or by US people. So why this is the case? Here we only assume that there are two. We assume there are only two countries in this circumstance. The first one is obviously UK, and another one is US. So the demand of British pound only comes from US. So the demand here is the foreign demand. So the demand for British pound is foreign demand. Since there are only one country, there is only one foreign country, which is the US. So we say that the demand for British pound is the US demand. So in other case, the demand for for British pound is the supply of US dollars. And the people in the US, they supply US dollars in exchange for British pounds, and then to purchase British goods and British services. So the supply of US dollars is the demand for British pound. So you have to keep that in mind. And this is very important when you answer the questions, because I'll tell you the factors that affect the the US supply of US dollars, and you have to know that the US supply of US dollars is simply just the demand for British pound. So, and in that case, you can use the demand for British pound to determine the changes of the demand and supply curve of the British pound, and to answer the question. So again, the demand for British pound is the supply of US dollars by people in the US. And yes, the curve is a downward sloping curve. The corporations and individuals in the US would purchase more British pounds or British goods when the pound is worth less. And obviously, the supply curve or the supply schedule of British pounds is a upward sloping curve. It means that when the price of British pound is low, the quantity supplied is low. When the price of British pound is high, the supply is high. So here the supply of British pound obviously comes from people in UK, right? Because the people in UK, they possess British pound and they supply British pound, and it can also be seen as, so the supply of British pound is also the supply of British pound is also the demand for US dollars, right? Because the people in UK, they possess British pounds, so they supply British pounds in the exchange market, foreign exchange market, and exchange for US dollars to purchase products in the US, right? So the supply of British pound by UK people, by people in the UK, the supply of British pound by people in the UK is the demand for US dollars by people in the UK as well. So the people in the UK, they want US dollars, they demand US dollars. So how do? They supply British pound. So the supply of British pound is also the demand for US dollars. So you have to keep that in mind. So again, the demand for British pound is the supply of US dollars. And the supply of British pound is the demand for US dollars. So you have to be careful with these two circumstances. And the supply curve is an upward sloping curve. So when the pound is valued high, British consumers and firms are more willing to exchange their pounds for dollars to purchase US products and securities. And how do the exchange rate equilibrium determined? How is the exchange rate equilibrium is determined? Well, the intersection point of the supply curve and demand curve determines the value of British pound. And the value of British pound is simply just the equilibrium exchange rate. And this is the equilibrium amount or quantity, and this is the equilibrium price. So now we're going to look at the changes in demand. So first, the increase in demand schedule. So when the demand is more than supply, so you see here, if the demand is more than supply, we say the demand curve is shifted to the right. or there is a outward shift in demand curve. So this is the new demand curve D prime. So this is the old price P1. And since the demand curve is shifted to the right, we find a new intersection point. So this new point represents the new price. So the P2, obviously P2 is greater than P1. So we can see that there is an increase in exchange rate. So increase in demand results in an increase in exchange rate. So same thing here. If we have a decrease in demand schedule, so anytime you see a decrease, it means that the demand curve will be shifted to the left. It also means that there is an inward shift. So this is the old intersection point, the old price, or the old exchange rate, and this is the new intersection point, or the new price, P1 and P2, and we can see the P1 is greater than P2, or we will have a reduction in the exchange rate. And for supply, it's the same thing. When there is an increase in supply, so we shift the supply curve to the right, or there's an outward shift for the supply curve. S prime, this is the old price, P1, and this is the new price, P2, and P1 is greater than P2. And we have, we have a reduction in exchange rate. And if we have a decrease in supply, so demand and supply, it means that the supply curve will be shifted to the left. So S prime, this is the old price, P1, and this is the new price, P2, and P2 is greater than P1. So we have an increase in the exchange rate. All right, thank you for listening. Let me know if you have any questions. Like I said, chapter 4 is probably the most important chapter in the first test. So be sure you understand how to analyze the graph. So you will see that on the test. Thank you.